Consider the scene from Vijay Deverakonda's latest film, Family Star. It happens after an antagonist shows up at his house with an auto rickshaw and demands that his sister-in-law get in as compensation for her husband's unpaid loan. Unsurprisingly, this angers our hero, who beats up the goons. But then, our hero also walks up to the baddie and delivers this threat. We also have men in our family. We have the things you have. But unlike you, I don't need pickups and drops. Open fields, go-downs, sheds, buses, trains, cars, practically anything is okay.
మా ఇంట్లో కూడా మగాళ్ళు ఉన్నారు. మీ ఇంట్లో వాళ్ళకు ఉండేవే మాకు ఉన్నాయి.
Why are Telugu films like this? This is a question that Telugu cinema enthusiast often faces. With the pan-Indian success of films like Kabir Singh and Animal, and the spectacular failure of a film like Liger, all films made by Telugu filmmakers featuring protagonists who insult women in some fashion. The sense one gets when talking about Telugu films to progressives from other states is a silent accusation that a smaller industry's sexism is being exported to a larger one and pandering straight to the masses and their misogyny. A glance at the films that have come out of the Telugu industry over the past few months reveals something. In July 2023, there was Baby, a coming-of-age romantic tragedy of errors which saw young men cheering in theatres for scenes in which the male lead verbally abuses the female lead. We had Tiger Nageshwar Rao, in which the lead ogles a clearly uncomfortable heroine and tells her he feels, quote, a different kind of hunger. Guntur Karan, in which the leading man comments on the body types of heroines across generations, from Bhumika to Sri Leela. We've also had Tillu Square, the sequel to DJ Tillu. Both films take the noir trope of the femme fatale and marry it with the more local trope of the woman who brings ruin. In these films, women are a mysterious, dangerous and fickle other with mysterious motives, and their entry into the hero's life spells doom. Their humor comes from reveling in a particular variety of male victimhood. In her seminal book, The Second Sex, Simone de Beauvoir says that for men, quote, woman is mysterious in essence, unquote, and that this trope is a sign that, quote, men are unable to penetrate her special experience with any working of sympathy. Some of these examples will probably be contested. Sai Rajesh, the writer-director of Baby, has stated that he condemns the misogynistic reactions elicited by his film, for instance. With many films, the misogyny stems from an anti-hero figure, which offers a sense of plausible deniability to the authors of the work. Even the films that one would most like to recommend to those unfamiliar with Telugu cinema, Sekh Haleja, Pushpa, Bahubali, have some degree of sexism that the advocate finds themselves in the awkward position of having to provide disclaimers for. It isn't that other film industries in the South haven't been guilty of horrific sexism and misogyny, but there's a sense with mainstream Telugu cinema that even now, in the 2020s, there has never quite been a reckoning with feminism, and that perhaps there is even a reactionary aversion to it. The question then is, where do the gender dynamics of Telugu cinema emerge from? Last year, in a roundtable with Telugu film journalist Prema for Women's Day, Venkatesh Maha, the writer-director of Care of Kancharpalam, made the observation that in Telugu, the same pronoun that is used to refer to inanimate objects or animals, adi or dani, is used as the non-respectful feminine pronoun.
జనరల్గా మన వాడినిటి తీసుకురా అంటారు, దాన్నిటి పట్రా.
Language constructs worldviews. The suggestion is not that a culture is uniquely misogynistic, but rather that every culture must confront and contend with its own particular misogynies. Contemporary mainstream Telugu cinema's gender dynamics are also rooted in the history of the mass film itself. In the book Megastar, Telugu Cinema After N.T. Ramarao, scholar S.V. Sriniwas comments on the gender politics of the mass film in the era of Chiranjeevi and Rajnikant. The heroes of the mass film engage in a battle against upper-class/caste villains who are the enemies of state and society. In the genre, class and caste dynamics are further fused with gender politics. Highly masculine lower-class/caste men carry the class war into the interpersonal domain by either aligning with sexually aggressive lower-class women to fight a common rich enemy, for example gang leader, or tame the rich man's arrogant daughter and marry her to ensure the resolution of social and economic contradictions, for example Gharana Mogudu. In Megastar, S.V. Srinivas also talks about the rowdy hero, an excessively masculine, subaltern protagonist characterized by his, quote, propensity for enjoyment, which ensures that spectatorial investment in the figure is suitably rewarded by his pursuit of pleasure. In the 80s and 90s, this figure was more embedded in actual class dynamics, as seen in films like Mutha Mestri or Khaidi. And while the 90s and early 2000s saw a move away from this, the rowdy hero made a big return in Telugu cinema in the mid-2000s with Puri Jagannath's films, most prominently with Pokeri. However, this time, the class politics had mostly dissipated. What remained from the old mass films was the fantasy of taming the woman. In Businessman, when our hero, an up-and-coming gangster in Mumbai, shows up in a sports car at his love interest's doorstep, she rejoices at the prospect of being gifted an expensive car and tells him that she loves him. His response?
I love you.
2 కోట్ల రూపాయలు కార్ గిఫ్ట్ ఇస్తే ఎవరితోనా ఐ లవ్ యూ చెప్పుద్ది.
In Desamudru, when the heroine who has taken a vow of celibacy and joined a monastic order tells the hero that we're all just dust and to dust we shall return, he asks her if she'll sleep with him for the night. What does it matter? He says. We're dust after all. Then there is Ismart Shankar, in which the protagonist pretends to rape the heroine, and it's all treated like a gag. In so many of these films, the woman's personhood is treated as an obstacle to the hero's libido, something which the audience is invited to identify with. Any reservations she might have about being with him are framed as misguided or frivolous. A defense of the gender politics of these films commonly offered is that these male characters weren't meant to be idolized, that they were flawed. But watch the scenes where they interact with women, and it's difficult to deny that you're being surreptitiously invited to partake in their treatment. Slowly, a generation of stars who had started out playing more classical, noble heroes in the late 90s and early 2000s started playing this type of lead character, possibly because of the success of these films. In Jalsa, we saw an extended comedy scene where the hero jokes about how enjoyable rape is. In Kaleja, we saw scene after scene of obnoxious misogyny, and one could always sense the filmmakers anticipating the whistles and cheers of men in the theatre with their writing. Today, unlike other industries in the South, the progressive politics of the smaller films like Shekhar Kamala's Anand, Tarun Bhaskar's Pelli Chupulu, and Venkatesh Maha's Care of Kancharpalam doesn't seem to be permeating into the bigger films. Much of the sexism also has to do with the fact that there are so few female filmmakers in Telugu, Nandini Reddy being the only prominent one, and her films are often refreshing despite their flaws, precisely because of the personhood and interiority they impart to women. After Arjun Reddy, the smaller films seem to be changing too. We got RX 100 right after, and Baby. In Animal, we witnessed a type of rowdy hero with the class politics of the original mass films all but erased. Here was a rowdy with enormous generational wealth.
मैंने बोला था ना ज्योति, क्रिमिनल है हमारा बेटा.
But the scenes in which he speaks to women were all too familiar if you grew up with Telugu cinema in the past few decades. Going by some edits and podcasts on YouTube, it also seems that the politics of these films find resonance with anti-feminists and Sigma male enthusiasts. In the film that Parasuram made before Family Star, Sarkar Vari Pata, the heroine defaults on a loan she takes from the leading man, and as compensation, he asks her uncle to leave her with him for the night. The joke here is meant to be the indignity of something that carries the stigma of rape, but isn't rape. Turns out he only needs someone to rest his legs on while he sleeps. There's something decidedly feudal about the gender politics of both these films, in men feeling entitled to the bodies of women who belong to families that wronged them. This reveals another facet to the sexism, the persistence of the feudal in Telugu cinema.
కోపం తీరిపోతుందంటే నన్ను కొట్టవే బాబు.
The Telugu film industry still makes some of the best mainstream blockbusters in the world. The pity is that in so many of these films, we're forced to reckon with the coexistence of incredibly ambitious filmmaking with awfully regressive gender politics. Recently, there seems to be pushback against progressive criticisms from people within the film industry, with some declaring that critics are irrelevant and elitist. It is perhaps worthwhile to remember that the Telugu states together account for the largest share of theatres in the country, more than 1,500 of them, And films matter more to the people here than they probably do anywhere else in the world. A few months ago, I was seated in a theatre watching Ridley Scott's Napoleon. There's a scene in it when Napoleon divorces his wife Josephine. She's clearly shaken, reluctant to sign the decree. He slaps her. I heard someone cheer loudly and looked around. It was a teenage boy, perhaps 17, grinning at his friends. I wondered if Telugu cinema had taught him to do that.